Are you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And this week, we're going to look at a listener question about paying off debt. But before we do that, we'd always like to ask you, if you could, please leave us a review on Apple Podcast or your podcast listening place of choice. It helps grow the show and build a new audience, and we really thank you kindly for all the reviews that you guys have left us so far. We really appreciate it, and the show's doing great because of it.
Okay, guys, so I'll get us started here. I'm going to read a little bit of the listener question. I'm going to paraphrase some stuff too, but this will probably be one of the only times you hear from me during this particular episode, just because I'm not feeling 100%, and Nate has done a lot of great work in working out some of these numbers for us. So
I don't know if it's great, but I've done some work.
So I'll come in here and there, but you might be hearing more from him. Okay. So we start out. I have tried to do a budget with my husband several times now, and we can just never get on the same page. I added up all of our debt, and it comes out to be just a bit over $43,000. So they really want to get their debt paid off in 2 years, but are a little bit overwhelmed right now on where to start, and they don't want it to keep going out and out up to 5 years or beyond. So we asked them a little bit more to get a little bit more information from them, and so here's what we found. So they said, what I've been trying to figure out is if it is better for us to budget weekly or bi-weekly. I have a huge problem with actually sticking to the budget once I make it. We all do.
Yeah, it's hard.
I am a bad impulse shopper, and I've done a few things to start getting us on track. I've put what bills I can on budget billing and on auto draft, so I don't have to worry about those, and we can automatically add them into our expenses for the month. They also have their bills set up now in 2 separate accounts. So her check goes into one account to pay for the house and car and their daycare. And the other account has her husband's check, and all the other bills come out of that one. He gets paid weekly, and it can go anywhere from $800 to $1,000. So that variation makes it a little hard for them to get a budget down and actually stick to it. They say, we're working on our savings, and between us, we have $400 a month going towards that account that automatically is taken out from our checks.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, but I don't think it's as complicated as a problem as what you want to see. I think there's some mathematical things we can do, but I also think there's some behavioral things that we would look at, particularly coming from somebody who is an impulse shopper, or can be. I think you probably say that I am. Is that
all the time?
Okay, so somebody who is an impulse shopper on my end, I understand it, and I'll talk you through some things that help me or what I think about when we're going through stuff. So first off, getting the budget up and rolling, think about it, is a fantastic thing. We still mess up on our budgeting goals, or as far as what we set out on a regular basis. It's really how far off the mark did you miss, and how are you trying to get better? That's the beginning part, is figuring out how much did we miss or what we're doing there. And then from that, we're going to go through and take a look at kind of breaking down some of your numbers. So it sounds like your income's pretty much going to be the same thing no matter what. And then your husband's income varies about $800 a month. That's $200 a week from the $800 to $1,000. So if he only gets paid $800 for 4 weeks, or then the next month he makes $1,000 for those 4 weeks, that's a variation monthly of $800, which is significant. That's an entire extra paycheck. So what I think we would do here is we'd go through and set our budget based on the lower income amount. So I would budget everything based off of $800 a week that you're getting. So that's the baseline. And then if you make $1,000 the next week, or for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever you make it for, that extra money is going to be going straight onto the debt. That's not part of the budget. That's gravy. That's money that would be placed directly onto the debt. Does that sound good to you, Danielle?
Yes, I think that makes sense to me.
Okay, so that's part of it as far as any extra. So I would just, that extra money, again, is just going straight on debt, nothing else. That is not part of our budget. It's not part of our money that we're considering ours. It's just purely meant for debt, and that's it. Now, I had a little question on the $400 a month. You said that as of right now, you're putting $400 a month away into savings. I want to just kind of dive into different options of what that means in my brain, because I want to make sure we're on the same page, basically. If that amount is just going into savings by itself and you don't have an emergency fund, keep doing that for a few months just to get a little bit of money into a savings account for a true emergency. $1,000 to $2,000 is enough to get started with the amount of debt you have. It depends, but you could always go up to 3 months worth of expenses. It's really kind of variable of where you want to be. But I wouldn't throw a ton of money in there, especially if your goal is to pay all this debt off in 2 years. So that's one option. If you already have an emergency fund set up and ready to go, that $400 a month, stop putting it into savings. It's not doing you any good there. Where it can help you is by putting it onto the debt. So if that's what's happening there, stop putting it on the emergency fund, throw it onto the debt as quickly as possible because, again, an extra $400 a month is going to make meaningful impact on your debt. And then finally, if it meant that you're just putting $400 a month onto the debt, $44,000 over $400 is going to take you 110 months to pay off, or a little over 9 years. So if your goal is to pay it off in 2 years, you're going to have to drastically increase the amount of money that you're paying it off. And again, this is also assuming there's no interest or anything like that, because debt grows if there's interest in all of those things on there. So that's kind of where we're at. If you don't have an emergency fund, get one set up, and you're doing a fine job with that. If you do have an emergency fund, stop putting that extra money on it and throw that extra money onto the debt. And then finally, if you're doing $400 onto the debt, you need to increase that money drastically. So let's go through, because if that's the case, the last one where it's $400 a month on that $44,000 debt, we need to come up with a new plan. And let's talk about the plan a little bit here. So your current debt is $44,000 and your goal is to pay it off in 2 years. Some basic math tells me that 44,000 divided by 24 tells me that I'm going to need to put about $1,800 a month towards that debt.
And that's assuming no extra interest costs as well. We're assuming just the 44,000 stays as it is.
Right. Because we don't know if there's interest rates, if it's high, low, whatever it is. But again, I'm just doing 44,000 divided by 24 because 24 months in a year. That means a little over. It's $1,833 is the actual math that works out to be that you need to put onto that debt. Now, we don't know what your total income is. We only know what your husband's one is. So we don't have a household income. We don't know expenses like mortgage, utilities, etc. So we can't really break things down super far at that point. All we can say is that if your goal is to pay off $44,000 in 2 years, this is how much you have to put each month towards that. And I think part of the other problem that you kind of alluded to was the impulse buying, and that's a behavior-based thing. That's something I struggle with on a very regular basis. When's the last time I actually didn't go over my budget?
I think it's probably been 4 or 5 months at least now, and it's gonna stop. It's gonna stop.
Yeah, it's I've gone through and but I've been consistently over the same amount, so that means I'm spending the same amount of money each month. Just 1 month I did bad.
So he's getting a free $50 each month.
That's what I'm telling. That's what I'm going to tell myself that I'm going through. But I digress. All right. So behavior thing in this. I am a very bad impulse shopper. I actually bought something on Amazon today. It's on our budget. Don't worry, Danielle. She's giving me the stink eye.
When he says on our budget, is it on ours or is it on his
on mine.
own
It's
personal
on my own
budget?
personal budget that we have.
On November 1st, can I just point that out?
Well, I have money to spend now. See, this is the impulse shopper badness, is that I can go now. I have cash to spend. But that's, I get where you're coming from, because if you have money and it's in your pocket, you can spend it. So let's talk about a couple ways we can look at that. I'm just going to go over an example here of different ways we can do something. Let's say you just decide to give yourself $100 a month to spend on whatever. Now, in our budgets, we each give each other $200 a month to spend on whatever. But for this example, I'm just going to do 100 just because it makes math a little easier. So once that money is out, you can't spend anymore. That's something, as I've said before, I struggle with, but I generally don't go like crazy. It's not like I'm like hundreds of dollars over. I'm usually like $50 over, and it's usually because I did bad 1 month. But for impulse shopping, there's a couple different ways you could restructure how you spend your money or how you give yourself options to spend money. The first one is you could just use cash. So at the beginning of the month, you take out that $100, and when the cash is out, you can't take out any more money until the next month. That's a really easy way to do it.
And that's actually how Nate's parents do things. That was kind of legacy from back when they were a lot more tight on their budget earlier on in their life, and they just took out money and they would hand it out to each other, and that would be for things like haircuts or going out to eat or whatever. And when that ran out, that was it for that month. And they've actually maintained that pretty well over the course of their life, even though their income is obviously higher now than it used to be, but it's a good habit that they got themselves into, and it works for them.
And they also are very disciplined. I think a lot of these approaches require discipline because you can obviously go to the bank again. But if you could start building the behavioral part of it where you can go in and say, this is all I have, and once it's gone, it's gone. It really does add a lot more power to what you're doing. Now, if you're like me and don't like using cash because you burn through it instantly, because that's what I would do, you could always use a prepaid credit card. So you can set up a prepaid credit card that's reloadable, and each month you put $100 onto that card, and then you have that to spend, and once it's gone, it's gone. So it's the only thing you carry with you. You just have that card that's loaded up, and you're ready to go. And then the last option that I would look at is maybe a debit card that's linked to an account with very limited funds. You guys said that you put $400 a month into a savings account. I would maybe make another account that just gets $100 a month deposited into it, and then that's all you have to spend. Find a credit union that has little or no fees for setting up a checking account, and you're set and ready to go, and you have your money set up, and that's all you can spend. Now, these are all designed, these options, these 3 options are designed to keep you from yourself. Because with budgeting, the money doesn't spend itself. You're the one spending it. I'm very bad at this. So if you can force yourself not to spend money when that impulse happens, you can't do the impulse anymore. That impulse is not a possibility. And as your brain kind of reworks itself and realizes it's not a possibility anymore, you start being able to not have the impulse as bad. And then eventually you're able to work with it, and it becomes a lot easier to live within those bounds, and the impulse kind of goes away. It's probably always going to be there a little bit. But I think the I have to have this right now, that equation changes when you know you have a limited amount of money to spend.
Another thing you can try too is, this is kind of an age-old trick, but give yourself a time limit. So say you see a expensive pair of boots that you just have to have immediately. Go home, spend maybe, let's say 3 days just thinking about it, or not thinking about it perhaps. And, at the end of those 3 days, if you're still like, oh my God, I have to have it, then okay, maybe you let yourself buy it in that case. But more than likely, you'll probably have rethought it a little bit, especially because you'll be looking at your budget and you'll be thinking through what you'll have to sacrifice to get them. So it at least gives your mind time to step away from the object or the thing or the whatever it is and kind of think through whether or not you actually need it. So giving yourself even an overnight is a good idea before you buy something. Yeah,
that's fantastic advice. That's something that I've really gotten accustomed to. We plug Amazon a lot here on this podcast. That's because we spend a lot of money and we buy a lot of things on Amazon. But generally on impulse things, I almost always add it to a wish list. And then a day or two later, I'll look at the wish list and see if I really need that thing still. And there are things that I've put on wish lists that are years ago that I would have bought instantly, but I still haven't bought them because in the priority of things, they're not that important to what I want to do. So again, having that wish list or having a little bit of wait time adds a bit of priority, because when you have something that you see right in front of you, your priority is buy it now. Whereas if you have to go back to the store and think about it again or wait a few days, the priority starts slipping a little bit and you can reallocate how you spend that money a little bit better.
Yep. So those are a couple options then for trying to help wean yourself off of impulse shopping. I just wanted to add a couple things here as I'm thinking through what Nate put together and thinking through your questions. I noticed something when we were reading your email that you had mentioned you had done some budget billing and also done auto pay. Not saying those are bad choices. They can be really good choices, especially if you're trying to maintain a consistent budget. Just a little cautionary note though, for auto pay, make sure that you just at least check and make sure that payment is coming out accurately each month. You don't want there to be any issue from their end and you be paying more and not realizing it.
And also make sure it actually comes out. Occasionally companies will mess up, and even though if you have auto pay set up, you're still responsible if it doesn't take it out. So make sure you do that because you don't want to incur any fees or interest.
I have some auto pays on our bills as well, but I always just check. Each month I go through and make sure that it came out and it was the amount that I expected. So just keep an eye on it. And also if you have a contract that's running up soon, like with a cable company, make sure that it doesn't auto pay, just up to the next amount, just without you having a chance to call them and renegotiate your contract. So just a couple notes there. And also For budget billing, I know that a lot of companies will allow you to do that, especially like for utilities where it's spread more evenly across the year. Make sure there's no fees or anything you're paying to have that done though, because it's just money down the drain, essentially. Unless it's really, really helping you build your budget. In that case, maybe it's worth it.
Yeah, if spending a few dollars allows you to have a repeatable or predictable budget, it's worth the money. But if it's not doing anything other than making your life easier, it might not be worth the money.
So just totally up to you. I'm actually not against either one of those things. I just wanted to add those notes. I also, you didn't say anything about retirement savings. And personally, if I had $44,000 of debt, we actually do. We have more than that.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We have a house.
Well, even without the house, we have the second mortgage and we still have a car. So we're probably
we
sitting around about the same amount of debt as you are right now.
We get it. But either way, if you have a lot of debt that you really, really want to get paid off quickly, I actually suggest not going hard and heavy onto your retirement. I would say though, if you have, if your company is matching anything, make sure you are taking full advantage of that match. So I know it's hard. You probably want to put all extra money into that debt, but you don't want to be losing out on free money. So always make sure you take the match with your companies before anything else. And then if you want to pull back a little bit on any extra retirement, I understand. You want to be putting stuff away to get rid of that debt.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to wrap it up. If that does not answer your question, please shoot us an email back and we'll be happy to walk through more circumstances or more specific things with you. But that's going to wrap it up for today. Again, if anybody has any questions out there, we'd love to answer them. Just go to budgetcouple.com and click on that contact form and you'll go right to my inbox and we'll be able to communicate with you and help you out the best we can.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We will talk to you next time.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.